I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends. Welcome back to Ohio Politics Explained. Today, we'll discuss what plans are on the table to tackle high property taxes. We'll also break down the first redistricting meeting and why it matters that two Republicans endorsed each other for 2026. Joining me today is Anthony Shoemaker.
Hi, Haley.
Hello. Before we get going, my semi-regular plug. If you find OAP interesting or helpful, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or sharing this episode with a fellow news junkie. Our first topic is property taxes, the song that never seems to end. Lawmakers are returning to Columbus and have this issue at the top of their agenda for the fall. The House is working on a bill that would tie tax hikes to inflation, and Republicans want to override Governor Mike DeWine's budget vetoes. Remind us what DeWine struck down in the budget related to property taxes and what his logic was.
Governor DeWine, he set up the panel to tackle this because he didn't like what lawmakers done. DeWine vetoed the measures that would allow counties to reduce property taxes in school districts that carried over, I think it was it 40% of their budget from the previous year. And he struck down the issue that was going to give county budget commissions the power to reduce the millage on levies if they believe the collections were too excessive. And then he also vetoed the 20 mil floor issue, which guarantees certain amounts of money for school districts.
Yeah, and his basic feeling as he did this and he announced this tax working group was that he thought all of these changes at once would hurt school districts, make it harder for them to, fund services and things like that. But Republicans were pretty mad, and House came back in July to override one of the vetoes dealing with replacement and emergency levies, but they don't feel like the work is done yet, and they want to kind of finish what they started.
Yeah, and Matt Huffman says that they're going to take up more overrides this fall.
It's interesting because I feel like on these issues specifically, DeWine has kind of been on the same page with Democrats, maybe not in the exact same way, but Democrats opposed a lot of these proposals in the budget because they don't feel like it's going to provide any meaningful tax relief. They see it as just a way that Republicans can say that they're doing something about this issue, especially as we are all waiting to see if a proposal to abolish property taxes gets on the ballot. But Democrats, of course, are in the super minority, so they won't be able to stop these override votes.
I mean, the Democrats have been kind of pushing for this circuit breaker idea, and DeWine was interested in looking more into that. It'll be interesting to see if anything, from his panel comes with that. But lawmakers have been reluctant to do anything that's going to cost more money. But the big elephant in the room is the signature gathering to put this issue on the ballot, because I think that a lot of people think that if you put something on the ballot that says, let's get rid of property taxes, the average Ohioan might vote for it.
Right. And it's worth noting that whether they get on the ballot, it's a big if at this point. As we all know, it's really hard to put proposed amendments on the ballot. And this organization is grassroots in the truest sense. They don't have, well-funded organizations backing them. So it's an even heavier lift. I think there's some uncertainty about whether they're going to be able to navigate this process successfully, but they've been collecting signatures for a while now and have until July next year, I think, to get what they need. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of issue where, if you're kind of, you hate to say this because that property taxes, fund so many services. But if you're at a festival or you're somewhere and someone comes up to you with a clipboard and says, we're putting an issue on the ballot to get rid of property taxes, a lot of people will just kind of, that's simple, and be like, okay, sure, that sounds great.
And you mentioned,
not worrying about the details.
Right. And you mentioned DeWine's working group. They have to issue recommendations by September 30th. So that is just around the corner. But both Republicans and Democrats in the legislature aren't too optimistic about this. I think everyone is a little skeptical of the process and feels like this is just going to produce more of the same ideas.
Yeah. And, it's like it might be like something that's kind of in the middle, and it's not going far enough for Republicans, but it's going too far for Democrats.
Let's move to redistricting. Lawmakers began their work on a new congressional map, which must be done by November 30th at the very latest. As a reminder, Ohio is not doing this by choice. The current map didn't have bipartisan support when it passed in 2022, so it could only be in place for 4 years. What map proposals have we seen so far?
Well, we saw the proposal from Democrats, which is pretty much dead on arrival because it's an 8-7 map. The current map right now is 10-5. I don't think anybody thinks that the Republicans are going to be willing to give up more seats. If anything, they're probably going to be looking to add seats to their column.
Yeah, as we've talked about in here before, Republicans are eyeing Marcy Kaptur's seat in Northwest Ohio, Amelia Sykes' congressional district around Akron, and perhaps even Greg Landsman's district in Cincinnati, although I think that one would be a little tougher for them to draw in their favor.
Yeah, because they have to keep the city of Cincinnati whole, I believe. And so that is a tougher lift. So, a worst case scenario for Democrats is you end up with a 13-2 map. I think more likelihood you end up with a 12-3 map.
And Senate President Rob McCauley said this week that Republicans have not produced a map yet. We at least have not seen one publicly, but Democrats are frustrated already with the process because there are technically 2 deadlines before the November 30th deadline, the first being September 30th.
Not going to hit that one.
No, because for lawmakers to enact a map by September 30th, it would have to be bipartisan. Same with if they wanted to punt to the October deadline, that would also have to be a bipartisan vote. By the time we get to November, Republicans can just pass a map on their own. That would, again, only last for 4 years. And Democrats are worried that that's what's going to happen, especially since Republicans control every step of this process.
Yeah, I mean, the Republicans have all the cards, really. The final deadline is November 30th. You're in the holidays, nobody's paying attention, and the map just comes in time for the upcoming primary election. I mean, I think that's what Democrats are afraid of.
We'll end today with the 2026 races for governor and Senate. Vivek Ramaswamy and Senator John Husted held a joint campaign event this week and announced they would endorse each other. This was not a big shock. So why was this so important for Republicans?
Well, I think that, it's an early show of unity between Husted and Ramaswamy. The paths are cleared for both pretty much. Lieutenant Governor Trussell announced that he's not going to get into the governor race. Husted doesn't really have any opposition on the Senate race. And you've got this cloud out there with Democrats about, we know what Sherrod Brown's doing now, but we still don't know about Tim Ryan. He's supposed to make a decision by September 30th whether to get into the governor race. So it's an opportunity for Republicans to kind of show we're united, we're together. Democrats still haven't nailed down everything yet.
Especially since in past elections, Republicans had some very messy primaries,
yes,
especially.
They want to avoid those.
Right. And during this event, Husted made some other news. He was talking to reporters afterward and said that the apparent threat made by FCC Chairman Brendan Carr over Jimmy Kimmel was inappropriate and intimidating. Kimmel returned to air this week after Disney temporarily suspended the show following Carr's comments. Did Husted's response surprise you at all?
Not really. I mean, he made a joke where he was like, Kimmel was canceled because he wasn't funny. That was kind of humorous. But, some Republicans have taken that, have come out against Carr. Ted Cruz did, several others on the free speech angle. Because, it's kind of like, if you've got a Republican president now who's doing this to liberal comedians, well, what could happen when you have a Democratic president back at some point in the future? So I think they're thinking that way.
Yeah, and Husted, said that he believes in free speech, even if the comments made by a person are inappropriate, which he thinks Kimmel's comments were, but, defended his right to say that on TV.
Yeah, and, Disney has put Kimmel back on the air, but a lot of the affiliates are still preempting his show. I think like 20% of the stations across the country still didn't air it when it came back on, including some here in Ohio.
And one more thing before you go. The Buckeye could soon become Ohio's state candy. Senator Bill DeMora introduced a bill to make it happen, saying it reflects our culinary heritage and traditions.